Microphone check. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. It's like karaoke night.
Oh, hold on. Okay,
It's probably the only time you're going to be on the right side of me, huh?
I can see how this is going to go. We should have. You can watch a snare. You can do like little. Yeah, all right. I got a feeling this is where it's going to go. I got a better 2 drums and some.
Be ready on my right. Be ready on my left. Oh.
Things on the fly, right?
How's that mud water? How's that mud water? All right. Are we ready now?
Yes.
Are you ready over there, Amber?
That's why these are important.
All right. First budget workshop, take 2. You ready? All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Municipal and Wastewater Budget Workshop number 1. This is the first of 2 meetings. Tonight we will be going over department expenses. If everybody has their outline, that's pretty much what we're going to be going by. Just to remind the public, there will be no public comment during these workshops. Public comments go on the public hearings that are scheduled for later in April. Could I please have a roll call? Councilor Higgins.
Present.
Councilor Danforth.
Here.
Councilor Medor.
Here.
Council Pelletier. And Council Bragdon is running late and is not here currently, and Chair Dumais is here. Proposed FY24 budget work timeline. Mr. Manager, would you start your presentation, please?
Sure. I will. This will go directly against the directions that I just gave to Amber, who's subbing in for Matt right now. But I'm going to have you please screen share the timeline, please. The it says notice of timeline. Correct. Perfect. So you will see on this timeline, if you could just scroll down a little bit, that's perfect. Tonight, I will start with a high-level overview of the budget proposal that we have prepared for FY24. Once we do that, we will dive into the individual departments. This is a little over half of the expense budget that we'll be presenting this evening. The various departments you can see listed tonight, we will go through those individually and discuss with the council. Can close that and open the summary if you would. And also, can you add Matt? Get there. All right. So, together, Mary Alice and I and all of our incredible department heads, we worked really diligently on this budget, and we're very pleased with how it looks in this form. I'm going to give you some highlights of it before we jump into the rest of the individual department presentations. So if you look at the overall net expense on this budget proposal, you'll see year over year, FY23 to FY24, we have a total increase on this budget of $156,888. The next line down, net revenues, that shows a year over year FY23 to FY24 increase as well of $420,301. So slight increase in expense, much larger increase in revenue. That equals a good thing. If we go a little further down, you can see an overlay there. Year over year, that changes $45,000 of decrease. We are suggesting $25,000 rather than what was listed at 70 this past year, and in years prior had been much, much higher. We feel that that's not necessary in our current financial status. So we'll be suggesting a decrease there and feel we can do that safely. So high level overview, municipal tax raise. This is what we are intending to ask from our taxpayers in our community. Year over year, that is decreased by $308,413. And that is something that I feel very proud of, and that of the work of my team and certainly our treasurer here, Ms. Mary Alice. So I'd like to break down that increase in the expenses. So in the next section, we have all of the various changes at a very high level noted here. So total difference in payroll and benefits compensation is $196,000. That's a blend of two different avenues for increases there. In line with one of our union contracts, we're suggesting a 4% cost of living increase. This historically with the town of Millinocket has been set at 3%. And as I've spoken about many times throughout this past year, has created a very broken and outdated pay scale system. So there are a mixture of 4% increases and other somewhat minor but realistic increases to suggested pay rates for our employees. All because I very strongly believe that we need to invest in the employees that we have. We do not want to get in a position where we are in a constant rotation of training and offering lesser quality service. We have a lot invested into these people, and I really truly believe that they deserve the pay that I am suggesting in this budget. The workers' compensation you'll see overall went down about $60,000. That is due to our very, I think, great handling of our loss prevention tactics, our policies that we've put in place. We did a lot of work over the past year, and through the leadership of Mr. Angotti before me, several of those pieces were put into place, all combining into an overall discount offered to our workers' compensation plan for a decrease of $60,000. The paving line is decreasing in this suggested budget by a little over $100,000. I feel at this time, if we keep that paving budget where it is in this presentation, we will be better situated to possibly spend more and get more paving done in the next few years. Currently, we have the one company that works very closely with us, and regardless of what the wider reaching market value of pavement and the materials comes to over the next couple of years, in the current state, we have to send this company back and forth to Bangor to fill their trucks and to come back with the materials to pave the roads. They only have the 2 trucks to do that. That's a 3-hour turnaround minimum. It's a very high cost impact to the project. So in the hopefully not so distant future, in year, 2 years, who knows? There's a proposed asphalt operation in a local community that will be able to offer a much shorter distance to be traveled to load those pavement trucks, bringing the local cost of that project down regardless of bigger market value. I'm happy to take any questions on that a little later. The hydrant rental is listed here. That has an increase of $40,860. That goes into what we pay per month to Maine Water to have access to our fire hydrants. And that includes the rate increase that they had scheduled for this coming year. Total other increases are about $55,000. This includes the increase to the library funding of $25,000. That's part of the loosely agreed upon plan that I inherited when I took this position. It was a 5-year process with $25,000 per year for each year. And lastly, in that section, we have $10,486 as an increase to our county tax, making the total $156,888. I'll give you a little rundown of the revenue here. We are slated this year in our budget to receive just about $2.2 million in Maine State revenue sharing. That's about a $600,000 increase year over year from FY23. Strategically, we are using most of that funding. We have 75% of it built in as revenue from Maine revenue sharing. We have 25% of that kind of shelled under the undesignated fund balance. We'll be using that in its place. That gives us a safety net should that Maine revenue sharing come in lower. We have that much wiggle room there to be prepared for any changes. And then on top of that, we have a few $100,000 that we feel we can safely bring in from the unassigned fund balance to offset some of the additional costs that are occurring in this budget. Our fund balance in its current state is very healthy and maybe a little too healthy. So we feel we can use that very safely. Again, main bullet points: total increase in spending, $150,000. Total increase in revenues, a little over $400,000. Total ask to the community taxpayers in this presented budget as it stands, a decrease of a little over $300,000 for the municipal side of the budget. Do we have any questions on this overview? All right. Amber, could you go to the expense report, please? Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Marielle? All right, so starting with general government. Looking at this department, you will see some minor increases in the salary lines. These are related to either the 4% suggestion or individual conversations about performance in the position and investment into that employee. You will notice the removal of the part-time funding from that line. We'll see that show up later in another department as we've combined. That part-time budget was split between a couple of departments. We've just take a cleaner approach and combined it into the one department that it really serves the most. So you'll see that actually show up a little later. Out of that wash, we see an overall increase in the general government department of $4,064. Do we have any questions on general government?
From the council? Matt? Council Bragdon?
Yes.
Any point you have a question, just go ahead and flag it and I'll recognize you.
Sounds good.
Okay, Amber, if you could scroll down to the airport operations line. Yes, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier. We're gonna jump to airport to include it in this rundown this evening. Jeff has a scheduling conflict and we wanted to make sure he was going to be able to be here this evening rather than at the next workshop.
What do you know what page it's on real quick?
21.
Page 21.
Page 21.
Thank you. And just a friendly nod when we're all ready will be a good cue. Thanks. All right. Thanks for the thumbs up, Councilor Pelletier. In the airport operations, the only real noticeable increase here is the part-time line. This is the position we discussed recently and the position and funding that was approved by a council order. So that's the majority of the increase. And then we factor in other discounts and decreases that have come through that department or how it affects the workers' compensation coverage and other decreases. For example, building maintenance, you'll see is decreased substantially. We were able to take care of most of those concerns over the past year and feel there is no major project that we need to take care of or plan for this year. So even with the additional funding for that part-time position, the overall increase in that department, $7,594. Are there any questions on airport operations? Awesome. Next, we have airport business. That's right on that same page. This is the expense side of the inventory basically that we have for sale up there or the leased spaces. You will see an increase here of $15,000, which appears large at first glance. That is little or no risk. That is an inventory item that we then sell for profit. On the other side, you'll see revenue side projects that at next week's workshop. And so along with those items and a couple other minor decreases, we have an overall increase in that department from the jet fuel totaling $14,954. Any questions for airport business?
Council Madore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just where I've noticed consistency along the jet fuel line is, and because it seems like the airport's doing more business, especially with Life Flight, I'm just wondering if that's enough in that line to cover the cost of buying. I'm seeing a nod from the airport manager that it is enough to comfortably make sure that there's enough airport fuel purchased to be able to have for resale. Hi.
That's an inventory item. So what will determine the expense there is the sales. So if more fuel is sold and there's a need to purchase more fuel, then we would do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions, Your Honors? All right. Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff, for your assistance on that budget. Muted, so that's good. So we're going to scroll back towards the top of the expense packet, and then we will not be jumping around anymore. Promise. Page 2. This is elections and registrations. The minor increases here, payroll, postage, office supplies, all costs of doing business. Overall increase $3,318. Do we have any questions? Would it be helpful if I give the total in that budget department? Okay. Fantastic. We will move to the town clerk's department. And I'll mention that as I go through here, I'll be giving updates from where I sit and my involvement from that department. If we end up getting a little more into the details, I'll be certainly offering to pull the subject matter experts up to the mic and they're willing to answer more detailed questions. So within the town clerk's department, you're going to see increases in salary and benefits lines. The largest you'll see is due to a proposed adjustment in one of the positions in that office. We feel very strongly that will increase the effectiveness in that employee and provide greater efficiency to the department due to both productivity and the workload. It also allows us to set up proper backup or deputy status for both town clerk and tax collector within that department. Essentially increasing one person's workload that then spreads out availability to a couple of others in that department. The total increase proposed in this form of the budget is $23,992. Are there any questions within the town clerk's department?
Councilman Medore.
Also, Councilor Pelletier, just in case.
Councilor Pelletier first. I yield to Councilor Pelletier.
No, they were all adjusted. That was the largest adjustment. The town clerk's line had, we had negotiated an agreement higher than the 4%, as well as the tax collector, which I still think have room for growth to be paid adequately and in comparison with other communities.
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, that I was just reading in the weekend edition of the Bangor Daily last week, where there are several municipalities where there is proposals for especially for ballot clerks, for a wage increase for ballot clerks to be able to go ahead and have them, because there is people under the certain climates that we've had with elections lately. There have been a lack of people volunteering for them. We're very fortunate in who we have. I'd like to see we retain them and reward them for the good work they do. I have no trouble with increasing the ballot clerks' wages going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
As of right now, there wasn't any increase in the ballot clerks other than the minimum wage increase that they will see. If you're looking for me to include more than that, but we do have a pretty solid. They're considered part-time, and we don't do the cost of living. They just stay at the minimum rate, the minimum wage rate, which is going up to $14.75, I believe, soon. Is it not already $14.75? I can't remember.
Right now it's $13.80.
Right there, I have it written down. Yes, $13.80 currently, and in 2024 it will be going up to $14.25.
I just want to clarify that I think in this. Sorry, did we just jump back to elections and registrations?
He was speaking to elections. And
We just jumped back to the part-time line in elections and registrations versus the salary lines within the town clerk's department that we were on, just for clarification, so everybody knows where we are.
Yep.
Council Madore, are you proposing that we increase that back to elections and registrations for a minute?
I would not be opposed, considering, even though it is only, you know, they are part-time employees. I would not be opposed to a 4% increase for our clerks moving forward. I think, like I say, they do an invaluable service. I think we're very fortunate in the group that we have, and we've got some big elections coming up in 2024 as well. So I would have no problem with making a motion to increase that salary line to reflect the 4% increase that we have talked about earlier for other employees in the town office.
And that is above the minimum wage.
Yes.
Okay.
And the next increase doesn't happen until
I think I'm going to propose something that's going to try to avoid all that. So I would be comfortable, since we're going to be increasing it again at the beginning of the next calendar year. Why don't I propose that we bump it up to 14.25 this season, and then we'll already be prepared for next season. We won't have to do this again. Or is that meet?
Why don't we split the difference and bump it up to 14, and that way we got a 20. 425. We were to where between the 1380 and 425, 1425. If we go $14, that would be,
I mean, it's
comparable.
It's 25 cents. Then. I just don't want to see any. I would just hate to see that there's nothing to go to.
If I may add, I have not yet experienced an issue with retaining election workers. Our volunteers are substantial. They're always willing and available. They are coming by hard and few, but the ones that we do have, just because most of them are aging and not as available.
Council Pelletier, did you have a comment?
I still think that, considering what we have for other departments, I think the minimum wage plus 4% clerks, I think, is a good way to go.
Any other council thought?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind.
Mr. Chairman, Council Bragdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things. One, I didn't hear anything of what Louis said. His audio is not coming through. But I'm in agreement with the chairman. I think if we're going to end up revisiting this in January anyway, why not just do it now and, you know, give them the incentive?
Thank you, Council Bragdon. Any other council comment? Seeing none. Yes, Mr. Manager.
You know, in the remainder of our budget.
Cindy Sullivan.
Oh. Thank you, Amy. In the in the remainder of this budget, you'll see that there are very few positions I have anywhere less than $15 an hour. In fact, I believe they are anything that's less than that, I think is $14.25 or $14.50, and that's for part-time high school students. I may suggest that you offer a $15 base pay to the election workers. With the increase coming, where does it go? 14.25, the minimum wage next year. We would be likely adjusting that in another year as well. Just a suggestion.
How do you guys feel about bumping it to 15?
Overall, we're talking about a very, very minuscule adjustment to our, $8 million we're talking about.
Council Pelletier.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
Just up to 15 an hour.
I think it would be included and then eliminated and raised anyways.
Council thoughts?
I second Council Pelletier's.
Mr. Chairman, can someone repeat what the motion was? Because we can't hear it on Zoom.
The motion from Council Pelletier is to raise it to $15 an hour. That's been seconded by Councilor Madore. I have a proposition for $14.25, which you have in essence seconded, although there's no voting here tonight. It's pretty much all straw poll.
And this is for the election ballot clerk part-time line.
Correct. Yes. The elections at part-time. Councilor Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With what it said about and actually the town manager said about the students and their wages, I actually agree with Louis. It should go to 15.
We're just taking a straw poll here. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yes.
All right. Looks like you have direction to move it to $15 an hour.
I'm sure they will very much appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. So sorry for going backwards, actually, but we can move back down to the town clerk's department.
Yes. Any lingering questions on our proposal for the town clerk's department? See none. I'll continue. Thank you, Diana. In our next department, we have, this is 0107. This is assessing. We now have, as many of you may remember, we have a shared agreement for our assessor at this point. Right now, that agreement is in Island Falls, and the town we have an agreement with will change for FY24, but the agreement will be similar. We do feel this is a creative and strategic way to not only keep our very tenured and talented assessor, but be able to offer her the Maine State Retirement Program for the remainder of her career. The difference that creates is shown through the assessor line and the shared assessor line. We also have an increase in this department to the part-time line that absorbs the decrease mentioned earlier in general government. That also provides a suggestion to increase that pay from $13.80 to $15 an hour, much like we were just discussing. And then 20 hours versus 16 hours. Feel that would really benefit that position for a total increase of $19,409.
I'm going to go to council questions at this moment. I know that there has been discussion amongst a few of us council members anyway. The increased duties of the assessor with the revaluation, some of them were concerned that the duties would be, we don't want it to be overwhelming, and make sure that they have enough staff to help. Is this part-time increase in hours going to be used for those situations?
It would certainly aid in that process. We have another internal conversation going on with another part-time employee that works with us currently that may be able to lean into some of that additional workload when it comes to the canvassing work. I would turn to Lorna if there's any other details she'd like to go over. We do have some cushion in what we have budgeted for the revaluation that could absorb some of the additional costs for her time or additional internal costs on top of the company that'll be helping us on the assessment.
I think she thinks I'm short. I don't really have a whole lot to add to that. We're being a little creative to try to get the reval done in-house. Whereas if we put it out, as we've been discussing, it would be 3 to 4 years before we would actually get it implemented. So we have a pool of money set aside that you've set aside in the reval account. And at this point, I think we think that we can do it for that amount of money. Peter, please correct me if I'm misspeaking. But I think that the approach that we'll take will get us there. And I appreciate you thinking of me because the office is quite busy, particularly now without Sue. She did a great job of doing data entry for us. I've never seen anybody enter quite as fast as she does. So she's done a great job of getting the old property card information back into the software.
So you feel like with this budget, you're set up for success?
I think with this budget complemented with the reval money that we've set aside, I don't know if it's successful, but I think we can do it.
Thank you. We can only plan.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any comments or questions for the assessor? Matt, you good? All right. Thank you, Lorna.
Thanks, Lorna. That moves us to the municipal building budget. You'll see an increase to the part-time line. It looks more significant than it is. I'll just have you briefly remember some shuffling around that we did with the positions of custodian and code enforcement over the last year. This shows some of that washing out with the current arrangement. The only real increase suggested here is the 4% cost of living. And there is a noticeable decrease in elevator maintenance. That is an expectation related to our elevator modernization project that's coming up. We feel we won't necessarily need as many maintenance visits once it's updated. Total increase in municipal building budget, $5,633. Any questions?
Questions on this department? Good. All right, moving on.
Fabulous. The next department on our expense report is 0109. That is our audit. Our audit is what it is. It's a mandatory process. There are 2 providers in the state of Maine. We receive 1 quote. It is the current auditor that works with us, and their cost of doing business increases by $4,000. Any questions there? All right. Legal expenses, 0111. We're suggesting a decrease of $25,000 there. As I referenced in a recent financial update, we are relying less on legal services currently. I think that's due to the installation of confidence in our employees due to our administration and leadership. And a large chunk associated with one of the major legal expenses that has spanned several years that is has, for all intents and purposes, gone away. We will also be planning to rely more on the legal services that come with our Maine Municipal Association dues. I think we can very safely decrease that by $25,000 and be very well situated. Any questions?
Question on legal?
Legal?
Good. Council Bragdon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Manager, seeing the amount that's unspent, would it hurt at all to drop it another 25,000 to 50,000 total?
Well, I had considered that. The reason we increased it is, well, for one, it's kind of a wild card. We don't know what's going to pop up. We also have, exactly. We also have an upcoming arrangement with another attorney who will be helping us through some of the Derelict Property and Dangerous Building Act provisions that we need to take care of in our town. So there is some unknowns on what that'll actually cost us. So we're leaving what we think is a safe buffer.
Perfect. Thank you.
Does that answer you? Okay.
Councilman Dora.
You can't be. I just no, you can't. It
doesn't
go online.
I just happen to think right now, as moving forward, that I just changed the batteries in it too, that dropping the legal line any lower than it is going to be this year at 75,000, considering the fact that we have budgeted 100,000 in the last few years, I just find that it would be, I just think it wouldn't be very, because you never know, manager's right, you never know what's going to pop up during the course of the year. Plus, we have other legal services now that we may be contracting out to help us out with other situations, the derelict properties and things. So I wouldn't touch the line. I'd leave it at 75, and I can be comfortable with that with a drop of 25, but I wouldn't want to go anywhere.
Any other council comment? Seeing none. Council Bragdon, are you comfortable with the 25, or would you still looking for a second on your another minus 25,000?
I wasn't proposing decreasing it. I was just inquiring because of the amount unspent why it wasn't dropped more. That's all.
I got you. Okay. I think council's comfortable with the 75,000. Am I correct in assuming that? All right. Moving on.
Onward. Department 0112 Administration. This houses our bills for IT services, phone, internet, copier lease, that sort of office supply related operation. This also has our drug testing and physical line that's there for all of the, say, DOT licenses and other things that require those testing and physicals. But you'll also notice that later on we actually took the testing and physical lines from other departments and put them all here. So this increases, but it really doesn't affect the overall year over year of that line or that spending. Another increase you'll see there is associated with the parking lot rent. That had also been included in another line in the past. So we're just separating it for our own tracking purposes, and it shows as an increase. For those unaware, the parking lot next to the fire station on the back of one of Mr. Benjamin's buildings down here belongs to Mr. Benjamin. The town of Millinocket rents that lot from him to have access to park not only our employees, but other members of the community for them to have access to. So total increase there, just $1,300 in that department. Any questions there?
I think we're good.
Moving forward, 0114 is code enforcement. Just make it online? No? Okay. This, you'll see some changes there. This was involved with the shuffle we mentioned a little bit earlier. Over the last year, we were able to land a full-time code enforcement officer. Very happy with that. Salary proposed here is $55,000. The major benefit is that this person does not require benefits. So year over year, that actually provides quite a cost savings for us and has an overall decrease in that department, though it is the addition of a full-time employee of $16,786. Any questions in code enforcement? I'll note that also includes the, take that back, irrelevant. Very sorry. I think we're on to 0115, that's economic development. This is where the CAT TV funding is housed, along with our contract with Design Lab, and the economic development funding that was proposed and added through a recommendation of Councilor Madore this past year. We suggest keeping it there. We have not spent much of it currently, but it is in the hands and getting some guidance from the Economic Development and Sustainability Committee currently. So we do have some ideas on how we can actually use that to infuse into the community or into local businesses. Any questions in there? That department does come in flat.
Council Pelletier.
The only concern I have is this budget going to allow for us to get live broadcasts to our public service channel?
That's really more of a question for the technical side of CAT TV, who I don't believe is represented this evening, but we can certainly pose the question again.
I really think we're doing a big disservice by not having live broadcast on that station.
I hear your concern. I can certainly communicate with CAT TV and find out if that is an option. I do remember a conversation this past summer or fall where their more technical member of the crew had the impression that he would be able to do that, and was at that point working through learning the new technology that was provided by Beeline at the time. I can certainly reach back out and get an answer.
Mr. Manager, just reach out to him and get that answer by the next meeting if you can.
Absolutely.
Councilor Madore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here's where this is one of those situations, and the manager already mentioned it from last year when I went ahead and offered up the $25,000 in the economic development line. We got $21,700 there, but we have a lot of things that, we're talking about as far as economic development, sustainability for that money. I'd like to go ahead and propose that line be brought up by $28,300 to bring it up to a total of $50,000 for that line. Between the carryover and what I'd like to have that line at $50,000, so I'd like to bring it up. It would have to go ahead, and the raise would have to be, instead of $3,300, would have to be $28,300 to make it $50,000 for that. My reasoning for this, one, I think some of the monies are already going to be used in a relatively short time as far as projects and things going through economic development. I also would like to, what the original, my original proposal was for is, if we have any type of grant opportunity that has matches to it, that either going through economic development with the airport or whatever, that we need a match, we'd have that money available to used as part of a match for grant funding in the future. So I just think that it would be advantageous for us to keep that line very healthy moving forward. And so I look at the council to see if anybody else is supporting of this, but like I say, if we raise this 28,000, go from 3,300 to 28,300, we'll have $50,000 in that economic development line.
Thank you, Councilman Madore. Does anybody support that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support adding money to that line, but I'm not sure how you're doing your math. I just want to understand that because right now we've only spent 3,300 of that, right? There's 21,700 left.
Correct.
And we haven't ended our fiscal year and we may spend it down more so. Is that true?
See, it's not just me.
Spent any of that money this year. $3,300 was reassigned to two other projects, mapping and the reserve for the main fellowship program. So I guess that would have been the match that you're talking about.
Right.
So there's $21,700 available this year. Are you saying that's going to be spent this year?
What I'm saying is there may be other pieces that are going to take that balance down rather quickly coming forward. My concern is that it would be gone without adding anything else to it. And right now you're looking at only adding $3,300 to that line to get it back up to 25,000.
Well,
I would like to get it up to 50,000 because I think it would be a healthy balance moving forward. And like I say, if we need it for any type of grant match, it would be available.
So we'd be talking about doubling the budget from last year.
Yes.
And if there's any of this $21,700 not spent, use that as a carry forward?
Yes.
Okay.
I would second that.
Sure, we can find very lucrative uses for that funding.
Sure we can.
Is there any other council support for that? Council Bragdon, Council Pelletier, Council Higgins? Okay, looks like you have direction to increase that line to 50,000.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm sure we can do something good.
I have a question concerning the demolition line that has 0 in it. With the legal discussions that we've been having, that you just alluded to previously, are we going to need any monies of those to facilitate any demolitions going forward?
From where I sit, it's hard to tell. It's hard to plan for what's going to happen in the next year, if any, or how many. I would imagine they would be very few and very sparse over time. I would honestly suggest approaching those as one-time hits rather than planned budget expenses. I would hate to increase for any reason without an actual reason to spend them.
Good. Nope.
Please do.
Talking about the demolition and the code enforcement aspect of it, when you go through that process as a notification process, and as long as we do all those steps correctly, at the end of that, it's deemed that I can, in the next municipal commitment, add those fees and costs in and send a supplemental tax bill to the taxpayer, that they have the choice of either paying or we foreclose on it like any other tax lien would foreclose, and then sell it as a way to recoup our money, if that helps any with that line item.
Thank you. That's very good. Yep. All right.
And that's why we have Lorna.
Mm-hmm.
I think 40.
Moving on to Community Initiatives Director 0118. The only increases here are due to the cost of living and the subscriptions utilized by our Community Initiatives Director to communicate with our community members and beyond. The increase suggested is $5,177 for that department. Any questions? Moving on. 0119 is the American Rescue Plan Act This only shows what's promised or what's allocated to be spent. You'll see built into this is what was allocated by council order earlier in the fiscal year that went towards computer support for our remote setups to be able to continue to help the community members at our homes when we are there. Also, the funding for the iWork program for online code enforcement permitting. It does show a major decrease. That is not relevant. This is not taxpayers' funding. Any questions about the ARPA funds? 0201 Police Department. That is our negotiated price in the contract for service with East Millinocket, and is flat. Any questions, concerns, sarcastic remarks? So we're going to probably talk more about fire, ambulance, general, fire department, and ambulance in a larger conversation this evening, I would imagine. I'm going to give my overview from my point of view, and then as we get into a little bit of the finer details or minutia of that, I'll probably hand over to Chief Malcolm and Assistant Chief Cody. These budgets are a little more complicated. They do show increases due to payroll, benefits, necessary equipment for running the department. We have one additional scenario to discuss, and that's when I'll invite Chief Malcolm and Assistant Chief Cody to dive in further to those details. Last year we were directed by the council to hire additional people for that department. We were given the additional funding to do that. The option we have on the table for this evening would include 2 additional firefighter EMTs. That would bring us to a fully operational and consistent 2-person crew at all times. And it would provide an additional cost and potential savings in areas such as overtime. In my professional suggestion here is, and this may vary from our chiefs, is to, if we are directed to go after the additional 2 personnel, we would have the crew to have 2 on at all times responding to local calls. If we relied on our crew to do our town's business and any additional calls coming in were suggested to rely on mutual aid for that backup, that would be where we're allowed to save in the overtime. If we have the 2 additional people and we have those 2 people out on a call and a second call comes in for either a transfer or an emergency in our community or another community, and one of our mutual aid relationships, say East Millinocket or Medway, were to respond to that call, that would allow us to decrease the overtime spending from our own department. I would think that it would be more appropriate in terms of transfers from hospital to hospital that are requested often, rather than real severe emergencies. And that's a situation I'll let the chiefs go a little bit further into. The way it is presented is not necessarily to be budgeted for, but allocated as a cost from the unassigned fund balance to be used if the positions are able to be filled. That is a challenge to that career field right now, is availability and willingness to take these jobs. If chosen, that overall increase to the department would be just shy of $200,000. And that example is factoring in the higher of our benefits costs. So that would be the family level, say. If if those positions were taken by people who only had the single plan, the benefits package would be cut in half, basically. For two positions, that would take a $60,000 cost down to about a $30,000 cost. Is that correct? And I'll hand that back to you. You got to turn your mic on, sir. There you go.
Aid. The people that we have mutual aid agreements with, does the town of Millinocket pay that town, let's say Medway or East Millinocket, for responding? Is that how that works?
I'm going to have our department
This
heads
is,
come up.
this is kind of going
speak to
off
that.
an article that I read in the newspaper today. Oh, you didn't read it.
I haven't read that one yet. No, we do not.
We do not
Our
pay.
mutual aid agreement with East, the only one we have is East Millinocket. Medway expanded their ambulance service.
Oh.
The only one we have now is East Millinocket. And it's just like our mutual aid agreement with them. We go to them or they come to us. We don't. Now on an ambulance call, if we went down there and transport somebody, we would charge that resident. But we do not charge the department.
So they pay their, if East Millinocket responds to a Millinocket fire call, then they pay their own people.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yes. And they bill it. If we do an intercept for them, we charge them a flat $300 fee. But no, our mutual aid agreements are just give and take.
Thank you. At this moment, we're going to take we'll take a 10-minute recess. There's some people that need to use the restroom, so we'll take a 10-minute recess.
Sure.
Let me know when you're ready, Matt. We're back from a 10-minute recess on the first budget workshop for municipal and wastewater. We are currently on the fire and ambulance general. Mr. Manager, please proceed.
Well, I kind of went through my thoughts on the department. I spoke about the potential increase for additional employees to be fully staffed, the 2 people every day year round. If there's any further questions around these scenarios or how they work or other pieces of the budget, I would certainly invite you to ask them, and I'd invite the chiefs back up.
Any council comment? Council Madon.
Oh, my understanding during the break is if we add 2 positions, we'll be actually advertising 3 positions out there because we have 1 position open right now. That one, just for clarification, the 1 position that's open right now is already built into this budget.
Correct.
So the other 2 positions would be, those positions would be funded as they are filled through the undesignated fund balance. Okay, I just wanted to get that for clarification because people have been seeing that there's 1 position already advertised. So basically we'll be, if everything goes the way it's proposed, we'll be actually looking to fill 3 positions on the fire department.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
We would fill the 1 if we're able to. We would then advertise for the additional 2. And if it looks like we have a promising applicant pool, I would come to you and present an order for this additional funding. Or if it's approved, maybe I'm saying this incorrectly. Can you clear up that?
An order that just approves reserving funds in the undesignated fund balance. And then we could just go ahead and fill the positions as long as we stay within what was agreed to.
And if we do that, it would not be factored into the tax raise from the community this year, as it's not a promised expense.
And Mr. Manager, I know that you've told me, but please remind the rest of the council and the public how healthy that undesignated fund balance is right now.
It's 150% of what it needs to be.
So we have plenty to do that with.
I feel very confident that that's a safe bet.
I mean, this will come back to the tax raise next year. The only reason why we're talking about not putting it in right now is because he has 1 position he needs to fill, which is going to be challenging. So we're trying to be realistic as far as how we approach this.
My microphone might die. I like comparing.
I'll take this opportunity to mention that in the upcoming budget, we will be purchasing rechargeable batteries for our microphones here. He's right. We'll play hot potato microphone after that.
Okay, so I get that we have an unassigned fund balance that is at potentially 150%. My concern is future budgets and funding for these, and I like to see numbers. Can we do what we did last year? and get the comparison between adding 1 employee and adding 2 employees. That way we can get them physically, unless you have them right now. It looks like you're searching.
I can, yeah, you know, I thank you for bringing that up. I can, hang on a moment. I'll come to you and then you can screen share it. I'm not in the Zoom meeting here. Oh, no, this. But still affects.
I'm not saying that. I said I'd like to see it for transparency reasons. I want to see what the cost is and what. Right, but I would like to see the exact.
Thank you, Tom. So, can you scroll down to, yes, there we go. Perfect. A little bit higher. A little bit higher now. There we go. So, you can see here the FY23 budget in its current state, the proposed FY24 budget that we are presenting, and the last column over there is the proposed additional cost for the 2 firefighter EMTs. That shows their salary, uniforms, benefits, retirement, that sort of deal. And that is factored in at the higher of the medical insurance rates that I had mentioned earlier. So if you look at the hospital insurance line, number 3004, the total on that is showing at about $66,000. For example, if this were 2 single people who only chose the single person plan, that would drop to in half, roughly 33,000. That would and given the different variables within those plans, it could fluctuate within that realm.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from the council? Thank you. Moving on.
Well, give it a second.
So
Try again.
you, as far as giving you a direction, as far as having those 2 positions advertised.
Yeah, if we had solid direction to do that and to allocate the funding in the unassigned fund balance to that purpose, we would be able to advertise it.
And that's just a council order, right? That doesn't need to be discussed here right at this moment, right?
That's correct. However, take into consideration.
Thank you.
I feel this is an unlikely scenario, but if we filled the 1 position and then any additional of the 2 before the end of this fiscal year, we would incur additional costs this fiscal year that would not be totaled into this projection. You need to wait 1 second.
Like to make is you don't know what the whole budget's going to be yet. We haven't seen the school's budget.
Right.
So as far as knowing the whole picture and factoring in, because this will be a cost that will go forward to next year.
Right.
Correct. If we fill the positions, they would be built into the FY25 budget.
So I feel like if he wants to come forward with that request at a future meeting and in order, then we can deal with it at that time.
I would feel more comfortable approaching it that way.
Yep.
Thank you.
Very good.
Any further questions within that set of departments? So we're talking fire and ambulance, general, fire department, and ambulance. All right, we will continue. We are rounding the end of the presentation this evening. The next department to discuss is 0206. That is community services. As I mentioned earlier, the hydrant rental cost is increasing in the amount of $40,860. That's a rate set by Maine Water Company. I don't know if many in our community know this. The cost to our town per month to have access to these fire hydrants is $35,000. And with this increase, next year's rate will be $39,500 per month for access to that resource. So that paired with the what we're looking at as an increase for the power consumption for the streetlights at about $7,000. Overall increase in community services at $44,924. Any questions? That's a pretty straightforward expense. Next, 0209 insurances. Our insurance policy is increasing by just over $5,000, and that is the rate for our coverage for our town. Any questions there?
Seeing none, moving forward.
Enforcement officials, only noticeable change here is an addition of a stipend for the public health and safety officer. Chief Malcolm, as we all know, is planning for retirement at the very beginning of the upcoming fiscal year. He will no longer be a salaried employee. However, we did reappoint him to this title this past fall. So that's a 3-year position. We are very lucky to have him continue in that capacity. And the $3,000 stipend that we have built in there is what we feel adequate, especially for, I think it'll be a more involved position than some of the other stipend positions that we have. The total increase in that department, $3,311.
Seeing none, move forward.
Dog constable, that pay increase reflects the 4% cost of living increase. And overall budget is suggested to be down a little over $600. Total decrease $627. And last but not least, I'm assuming there's no questions. Last but not least, fringe benefits 0300. These are expenses related to our benefits. Total increase of $1,020. Anyone jumping out of their seats over that?
No, I'm just kind of hung up on the dog constable.
Why are we all looking over there? All right. That concludes everything from the list for the presentation this evening. What we would do is come back 5:30 on the 13th at before our regular town council meeting, go through the remainder of the workshop.
And then directly after that, we're going to be going into the regular town council meeting, correct?
That is correct.
Just so the public can understand that.
And just to finalize the process down the road, the week later, we have the first special hearing of the proposed budget. And then at our council, or just before our council meeting on the 27th, we have the second special hearing and vote on of adoption on the proposed budget. So just so everybody is following that timeline.
Well, I think in closing, I would just like to thank the public. I'd like to thank the counselors, and I'd like to thank the manager and his staff, the assessor and the treasurer for making this process as easy as possible. I think it's moved pretty smoothly, so thank you for that. And with that, do we need a motion to adjourn or anything?
We can
All right.
just,
With that,
we're done.
meeting's over.
Fantastic.